Right. Hey, y'all. This is Andrew with Popular Liberty and Jose Galison. Today we are here to talk about. Uh, oh, okay. Now we're online. We are here to talk about accelerationism and the LP strategy, and basically pick up where we left off last time. And the I think last time we had kind of gotten to through a lot of what I had to say, and we decided to leave off a little bit about what we had originally wanted to talk about, which was the kind of the link to accelerationism, as Jose Galison has talked about. And the because I in my framework, I see accelerationism as it's kind of a more of a leftist tactic where you're introducing chaos into a system, and that chaos can take many different kinds of forms in order to break down the current institution so that you can re-extract a new kind of order for it, because you can't get rid of a new order. You can't build a new order until you get rid of the old one. And I think Jose has a different kind of accelerationism that he wants to describe for us, and I think that from what I've heard of it, this might be a really good tactic to use in the fairly near future. You probably start doing it right now. And hey Jose, why don't you start telling us about it?
Okay, well, yeah. First off, so those who know, I'm Jose Galison of the No Way Jose YouTube channel. Usually my video is a little bit better, but we were having issues, so I wasn't able to get my cam working for some reason. But anyways, yeah, accelerationism. I mean, I don't like it because accelerationism has this like connotations of like violence, and I like violence, but not in that sense. Like I wouldn't want there to be bloodshed, and I don't think it normally pays off. I guess it's more like division is what I'm pushing for, because I want to start seeing a movement of like moving towards areas of freedom, and then they also kind of push the authoritarians to move towards like areas of authoritarianism. Like, and to some extent, it's not entirely perfectly voluntary like we'd like, but I mean, we're gonna try to be like, hey, fucking like, come over to our way. But if they don't, fucking fuck off. Go over to your little authoritarian land, and we can kind of live on the outside. And I'm kind of just like between shit posting, whether it be just moving things that way. Like I just think that that's the way going forward is creating a further divide, and whether that be physical movement, whether that be authorization online or shit posting or whatever. I think there's multiple means in order to drive this divide. I just want to create a wedge. Like one example I typically bring up when I talk about this is, because it was one thing that started getting me thinking down this line was I don't know if you ever read Against the Grain by James C. Scott.
No, I have not.
Yeah, but it was I mean, and I want to caveat everything where I am no fucking intellectual. I'm just some dude. Like I'm fucking college dropout, everything. But I mean, this is my shit. I enjoy it, but I'm not in no way.
College dropout might make you better, actually. Let's face it. That's a little bit more of a disadvantage these days.
Yeah, no, I mean, I learned way more like out of school than I did in, and I was actually a good student. So, but anyways, I normally bring that up to kind of illustrate what I'm getting at, because James C. Scott, like he's like an anarchist historian, and in that book he kind of goes into how the first ones were created, and like how he goes into how like the initial states were formed around agriculture. And it was kind of, we talked about this a little bit, like briefly in our episode. It kind of makes sense because agriculture kind of centralizes things. You create this monoculture where you're growing, corn or whatever, and it kind of creates a perfect environment for a predator to prey upon, a certain class of people or whatever. And in that situation, I guess, like he said, that in the non-fertile areas around the outskirts is where the barbarians is what we would refer to them in like historical terms or whatever. There's multiple different terms, but usually has negative connotations, like they're savages or whatever. And you know what? Sometimes they probably were a little bit, but
everything back then was barbaric.
Exactly.
You hear the stories of this, and it'll make your blood curl. That, oh my god, how were these people able to handle civilization? This was this was like a hell world. So,
Yeah.
but carry on. So we were at the some places were rural, some were urban, and they both sucked. Keep
Yeah,
going.
but the case that James C. Scott makes in that book is that the people in the outskirts were actually kind of having a better quality of life. I mean, history doesn't tell their tale, and I think sometimes history rhymes. And I mean, James Gentleman introduced me to integral theory, and they kind of looks at time because the Western conception of time, they usually look at it as like a line. Eastern usually looks at it as like a circle. But like the fucking integral theory kind of looks at it as like a helix. So it's kind of a merging of the two. So like I kind of like it. It kind of like it looks at so spiral helix, whatever. But yeah, fucking like it's kind of almost like this is kind of a repeat in a way, and I kind of feel like that's one of the best examples of where I see things going forward is where we're going to have on the outskirts. Like that's my ideal. I always like try to say like I would prefer to see something along the lines of like soft nullification or soft secession where it's never really formalized, but it just kind of happens, you know, because it's like I think in the future we're going to see kind of like the James C. Scott conception in initial states where you have these areas that are more authoritarian, more centralized. This is going to be around like, you know, for them it'd be fertile, so it'd be like agriculture. Maybe in today's we could replace that with technology. So you could say like, you know, the smart cities of the Agenda 2030 type shit. But fucking yeah, I mean, that's my best way to illustrate kind of what I'm getting at, where I think things are going, and I kind of want to drive things that way. And I don't think this is a magical anarchist pipe dream really either. I actually don't even think this is technically anarchy. I think even in this case, my conception of where I would like things to go is technically we would still be part of the state. It would just be more of this like, you know, if you're in the areas that are like more on the outskirts, it's more of a soft, squishy kind of concept of a state where it's like they're more focused pushing their power centralized in the little smart cities. They're not as focused in the outskirts. That's kind of where I see. And I think we can kind of almost in a sense create that divide and start causing that going forward. Because, I mean, you know, start migrating those ways. Yeah. Sorry, I've been rambling for a while, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, this is something that Matt Erickson and I have talked about a lot. Is that we're at a four turning cycle, and we're at the which is at the very end of this order, and we're about to break it down and plan out a new one. And this is it's every really every 4 cycles that everything changes, because that's when the generation that really built the system is just dead and gone, and they're not there to defend it anymore. And by that point, it's become so, become so mutated and corrupted away from its original form that, now that you have, people who have risen up to game the system and, just screw everybody else. And, there's a class of people down below that the system just is not working for at all. And so they're ready to just burn the system to the ground. And those people today are called the millennials. And because let's face it, we've been totally fucked by this system. It's like royally as a generation. And the howdy, Buck Johnson, howdy, Adam Patrick, and Rogue Liberty, and just want to say hi to all y'all in the chat. But yeah, this 4 turning cycle, usually around 4 turnings, you see 2 things. 1 is major migrations, and 2 is major wars. And I think we kind of just got away. I kind of think this is the war now. It's a Cold War. And the migrations we're seeing right now is a whole lot of people just moving out of red states. So this message of it's time to move, it's time to separate, this couldn't come at a better time. And particularly in the context of red states and blue states, and how a lot of libertarians have been saying, hey, we really need a national divorce. This is marriage. This is an arranged marriage that really has just turned toxic. Absolutely toxic. We're going back and forth, just sniping at each other, and they do their own the conservatives, and then we do our own the libs, and it's just this is degenerating into a sniper fight, and we just hate it. Everyone hates it. And
anything to own the libs.
Yeah, well, owning the libs is a lot more fun. And now you have guys like you and me who really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this message that, hey, we kind of need to separate, this couldn't come at a better time, because this is what everyone is already in the mood to do, where and the way I see it is the more that we get into this idea that, hey, you need to move to secure the benefits of liberty for yourself and your posterity, Imagine that, this is where, where I kind of see where some libertarians think that's too much of a burden. It's like, no, I should stay and fight a losing battle. It's like, dude, you're not even fighting. You're tweeting on Twitter. And,
not to go on a side stream, I can't stand that is the most smooth brain. I know there's probably somebody gets mad at me about it, the most smooth brain fucking like critique. And I've heard some big dogs make it, like say with Vin, for example, which that's one people always throw in, like, why don't you just go run away to Saipan? It's like, if I had the means, the fuck I would. Yeah. Like, I mean, and this kind of goes into the fucking, like, wealth and shit. And like, and you know what? Some people did better and are able to take care of themselves better than others. Like, so, and you know what? Say with Vin, for example, like him being like off, like in wherever, does not in any way affect, whether he can engage in this fight at all. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he's out there, strapped, fucking, gunning down feds. Like, what do you expect him, if he's stateside, he's going to magically fucking do? And even if that was the case, like, you're first. I mean, I feel like I'm an individual first and a fucking libertarian second, or whatever.
That's the right way, by the way.
So, like, I mean, and I'm actually not against collectivism in a sense. I don't prefer to live that way. I don't think it's depending on your definition of collectivism. As long as things stay voluntary, I don't give a shit. If you want to call it collectivism, whatever. But my point I'm getting at is, like, I think that's the proper way to set things up. So the first thing that comes before anything is your family. So, like, no shit. Like,
what else would you be fighting for? Yourself. Like, you're not. That's not a life worth living. There's no meaning in just fighting for yourself. There's so much more meaning and virtue in fighting for your family.
Well, I see my family as an extension of myself. That's kind of how I see it. So it's selfish as fuck, and I don't give a shit. I make no apologies for it. I very much am very friendly to the egoist perspective. And yeah, so I don't know, and I don't see that as there's anything wrong with that. If everyone lives along that ways, takes care of what is within their immediate sphere first, and then goes outward from there, we'd have a much better world. So I don't get where people get all fucking lame about this concept of. But anyway, I don't know. That just really irritates me. That people always bring. Oh, just run away.
And you don't even need to go as far as Saipan. It's like, okay, that may be a bit far. That some island in the Pacific Ocean might be a little bit difficult for some people. And how about try Texas? Or like maybe Florida, maybe North Carolina, New Hampshire. States that could really use an extra few Republicans. They're nice red states that have a lot of liberty, and a bunch of people who are really, really want to fight for it and are terrified to lose it, to a blue invasion. And it's like, you don't need to go all the way to Saipan. Texas is pretty easy. Florida is pretty easy, and they have decent, nice weather. Most of the year.
You can't. It's like this kind of whole thing it's like a spectrum kind of deal. And not to sound like a faggy lefty, but it's like, I do think, like, even if you say you're not able to uproot your life and move to Florida or Texas or whatever, there are still steps you can make that move it that way, whether it be online, whether you start setting yourself apart. I really, while it's still fresh in my head, I wanted to bring up something. I was listening to James Gentleman today on his show, and I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. But
only by name. I know he's in the inner circle, so it's like I'll automatically assume, okay, he's in the inner circle, he must be based.
Wait, not James Gentleman, my bad. LB Muniz, sorry.
He is too.
Both, okay, LB Muniz, that's who I meant to say. He said in the episode I listened today, I think it was actually with Adam Patrick, who's in there right now. He was talking about, and it just kind of, I don't know, made the wheels turn in my head. He was talking about how, like, I forget if it was niche or some concept with like the rule and the exception, and how the exception can't be the rule. And like, it kind of made me think that, like, I feel like if we behave as the exception, you kind of, in a sense, create that. So then where we're at right now as libertarians, we behave as if we're the exception. I feel like we need to start behaving as if we're the rule, and just acting like whatever, like, here I am, this is what I am, and set ourselves apart and create that divide, So,
well, not just that. It's like, it's also good messaging, or good, what was it? It's good communication skills that you project confidence. Because when you act like, hey, I'm the, this is something actually in his book. I'm blanking on the name. The one leftist guy who wrote The Strategy. oh God, he was like Saul Alinsky, his rules for radicals. He wrote like, no, what you do is, if you're a radical, you pretend like you're the moderate and you're the normal one. Then you could turn around and say your opponents are the radicals. And by the way, that's a really good tactic because it projects confidence, and people like confidence. They don't like someone who's like, oh, I'm a victim, I'm the persecuted. Nobody likes that guy. And the left does that, and everybody hates them. Yeah, and they're still in charge, but everybody hates them, and it's not that's not sustainable.
For a practical example, like on my day-to-day basis, like I don't make a thing of it, but if occasionally when I have be in conversations, people ask me what I am, what my beliefs, I don't ever shy away from being an anarchist. I mean, depending on who I'm talking to, but for the most part, I'll be like, I don't really believe we should have that. I guess you could call me an anarchist, whatever, but I'll say it so flippantly that and confidently that to them it makes it seem as if there's no issue in the world, like it is what it is.
Yeah, it's like you've thought it through, and you can answer these questions that they're going to come up with, and that reassures them that you're not some sort of dangerous person. It's like you're not going to feel threatened. Because again, like with the state, if you make the state feel threatened, that's when they're going to get dangerous. And that's just true of human nature in general. If you make a human feel threatened or insecure, that's when they're going to get dangerous. Whereas if you project confidence, you look like you're secure. You are the security. You don't look insecure. You look like you are the thing keeping people safe. And this is, again, and people want to be safe a lot and secure a whole lot more than they want to be free. And if you can project that, even just that self-image or that, maybe public image as a libertarian, that you are the security, the thing keeping people safe, and that they are safer following you than they are safer following the other guys who again are the bunch of degenerate radicals, which might actually be true of these radical centrists. But it's like who's going to keep you safer? Me or those insecure bastards over there.
Yeah, what's wrong with my mic? Everyone in the chat. It seemed fine when I started, but I'm a retard, so I don't know. You guys let me know if it's that distracting. If not, whatever.
I'm not sure. You might be coming in through your computer audio. If there's a computer mic or a laptop mic, you might be going in through that.
No, let me check real quick. It's showing I'm coming through this.
Yep, no, I'm hearing that.
Okay, I don't know. I'll try to move closer. I mean, is
that
better,
works.
Guys? All right. Distant and hollow, like my soul.
I don't know. Maybe you could pull it closer to you, but
let's do this. Whatever. Sorry, don't throw off the vibe. My bad. Just everyone was complaining about us. I was like, how distracting is it? But
calling you a boomer. But yeah, I think that's and go a little deeper into it. So you said it's not just about migration and self-segregation. It's also about doing stuff online and shitposting. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I just feel like shitposting has naturally kind of risen to the top in a certain way for our kind, because it, like, in a weird evolutionary type way, it almost is like, rose to the occasion, like it's kind of the perfect tool. The more I think about it, like, the better I'm like, this is fucking genius. Cause, like, for example, it's like, people always use the concept of like a dog whistle. It's kind of a dog whistle to our kind in a way. And so it's the perfect tool for fucking, I've been saying a lot, galvanizing your allies and identifying your enemies. So,
I've really noticed that about that it causes an immediate self-segregation, and you can tell immediately who's your ally, who's your enemy, and who just doesn't get it at all, and it's on neither side. They're just the guy in the middle who's going to get shot by both sides, and it's like, stay away from that guy. And but you can.
Sorry, and a lot of people say though, like, oh, well, there are good libertarians that get offended by this shit, but it's like, I don't know. I think kind of and I talked about on Adam Patrick's show that I think kind of the future that we need going forward requires a certain type of people. And yeah, you may be sort of on our side, but like when it's something close to Incapistan and you got to actually fucking do some goddamn work. Like, are you really the person getting upset about shit posting? I don't think is the one who's going to be digging ditches or whatever the fuck. Like, and there's something to like the middle class or people who've had hard lives or blue collar that you can hear the N word and go,
yeah.
Depending on context. Like, I mean, shit, my best friend's a black dude, and there are certain occasions I could say that, and he'd get offended, and certain occasions he'd probably fucking think it was hilarious. So I mean, obviously, we all know when it's about knowing when it's a joke, knowing when it's not. There's some tact in that regard. So I mean, it is a little bit of an art. There are people who do it in a dumb way, but So.
Well, even then, it's like you want to be perceived publicly as the guys who are having fun. It's like this is the real draw of Trump rallies. Everyone there is having fun. People go there just because it's a social event where a lot of fun people are gathering. And it's kind of like it's like a party, and it's like no one wants to go hear Hillary Clinton speak because it's not fun. No one wants to go look at Joe Biden speak because like you have to be separated by 6 feet and you have your own little circle and it's all dweebs and dorks and journalists. But I repeat myself, and no one wants to go there. No one's having fun. And this is something that's always to your advantage, is how you are publicly perceived. If you want to be publicly perceived as like the guys who are having fun, then and you want to have, and you really want to have your enemies perceived as these like angry school marms that that they just have like no sense of enjoyment of life at all, and they're just these unhappy people. This is like the sort of thing that really, really helps your public image, especially in contrast, because it matters, but in democracy, it matters both ways. And using something like shit posting as a tactic, which really just it has exactly the perfect effect on your allies and the enemy, where you look good and they look just like school marmy. They just look like they're they look like the Fakertarian faggots. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. they look like those guys.
Yeah,
they look like yeah. Go ahead.
If you want a master class on like kind of what I'm talking about in regards to the rhetoric, Jeremy Kauffman, he's fucking killing it, and like he just was on an episode with the Fakertarians, and he didn't really go hard with them, but there were some good subtle digs, and he handled this shit well, and like I was very impressed. So he is a good example of a lot of the rhetoric that I'm getting at. Like, if there is any fucking hope at all for there being an LP to do anything worth a damn, I feel like he's who they need to be fucking, rallying behind. Like, that's the only person only way I can see the LP to work. And I talked about this with Aaron on Timeline Earth, that like, because people always go like messaging, and it's like, yeah, but the incentives are all wrong. Like, yeah, maybe initially, like as like you're doing the takeover, but you're not going to keep this fire. It's going to get toned down. You're not going to be able to call fucking Lindsey Graham a faggot, and it's going to be okay when you're on the national stage. Like, it's not how this shit works. Like, and if that were the case, sure, that'd be fucking awesome. I just don't think it's going to work out that way. So, like, it's kind of like you kind of get neither. Like, it's like, we're going to do messaging and maybe get some people voted in, whatever. And it's like, yeah, you just end up with a shitty version of both. So, like, I don't know,
Yeah, and that's something I would kind of worry about if you're trying to take over the party. Once you do, if you start moderating, if you stop doing all the things that that got you where you were, and that is a normal human instinct to, now I'm at the top, now I just need to play defense. It's like, no, that's not the way this really works. It's like you kind of dance with the one who brung you, and if shit posting and putting out all of this positive energy, and positive publicity is what got you to where you are. Don't stop doing that. You don't go on defense, because basically what happened to the LP is, they went on defense for 50 years. And, this is what happens. The defense doesn't win you the war. And
yeah, for sure. Like the way that it should be going forward, like I said, if they can get to a point where they're calling Lindsey Graham a homo, and then they get the pushback from the fucking the mainstream media or whatever, and then they just go, "Yup," like that's the way forward. You know what I mean? Like, if they're able to do that, but I don't think they're going to, and so I that's kind of where I am, where I think the LP is kind of a fucking waste, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And unless they if they put Michael Malice in charge of the Twitter and they manage to actually pay him the money, because he's asking for like 50 grand a month or something like that, or like 1 Bitcoin a month. I'm like, Jesus Louise, that's a lot of money to manage a Twitter. And I mean, I know he'd do an excellent job at that, but I don't know if they're going to be able to afford that. And anyway, but they are going to be if their natural instinct is going to be, hey, we need you to be, aggressive but responsible. And what that really in practice means, just be responsible. and be risk averse. You can, because you can't be aggressive and responsible. By nature, you're taking on some risk, and I do feel like that's where they're going to go. But I hope I'm proven wrong. But at the same time, I just don't see it. They because a lot of the attitude at the top has already kind of been set that we don't really like shit posting. And it's like, oof, when you've already set that as kind of the precedent, it's kind of hard to walk back from. But I mean, he totally could, and he'd be embraced for it. The LPMC, that they could walk back from that and be totally embraced by it by their base. But I get that they want to be taken seriously, which is the problem with the LP, is they want to be taken seriously.
Yeah,
it's like they have.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, it's that same mind virus. We are a serious party, and we have ballot access in all 50 states, and we get votes, and we're the fastest growing party. And it's like, come on, man, you guys are losers, and just own that, be honest about it, and then have fun.
Yeah.
And because what you're doing, you have no chance of winning. You shouldn't pretend to be a serious party. And you should be the party that is here to mock the system. You are the court jester in the King's Court. The King's Court in Arthurian legend, was always, the jester was there to tell the truth in a funny way, and he was the only one in the court who could do that and not lose his head, usually. And they are the court jester, and they're nominating a comedian, which works. How about that?
It'd be fine if, with this conception that I'm talking about, if they go the shit posting route, they can make the state the joke, or they can do because I think I feel like the fear is that they're not going to be serious, that we're going to be a vermin supreme, and it's like, no, the thing with vermin supreme is it makes us the joke, whereas fucking if say we had every fucking LP account fucking doing shit like LPKY or whatever, or even harder, preferably, they would fucking it would make the state the joke, because it's you're the joke, where it's not just ha ha ha, I'll buy everyone a pony, fucking Vermin Supreme or whatever. That's how I see things. Or if that was to have any use whatsoever, and it's kind of, I always usually bring up Hoppe, where he brought up how to make the state a joke. I can't remember exactly how he worded it, but that would be kind of exactly it. If we had that, if that was the energy, that'd be fucking phenomenal. So
yeah, the energy is you're putting out is the most important for a third party, because you don't have anything to lose, so you don't need to be risk averse because you don't have anything to lose. And you've all if and basically you'll know you were really successful because they come after you. So it's like, if you're trying to make it so they don't come after you and you can be respectable, it's like, well, this was CLP's problem, and you're not doing a good job if they're not coming after you. So, and I think Dave understands that. So, which is why I'm like, well, why don't you like shit posting then? I mean, it's like, because okay, this is inconsistent. This is logically inconsistent with your strategy. Because if your strategy is to make as much noise and get attention and drive the news cycle the way Trump did, Trump didn't drive the news cycle by being nice to people. He did it by being the biggest hassle and troll on Twitter possible, and he was really, really good at that. That was his whole strategy, and it worked, and it worked great. And it's like, I mean, if you're trying to do something like that, where again, all you're trying to do is just help drive the news cycle a little bit, and which by the way, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to work. They don't have the ability to do that, and the mainstream media has marching orders to just nothing. They don't exist. If they're being effective, they don't exist, and if they're being really effective, then they're terrorists or something like that. So.
Yeah, at best he might be able to get on Rogan a couple times. So, I mean,
yeah,
once he becomes anything whatsoever that the fucking establishment doesn't like, they'll take him off any shit. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, he does go on about he knows this shit better than us, and he does. I'll give him that. He knows the media better than we do, but which makes me kind of what? You really don't think they'll just cut you off real quick? Yeah, you can get a podcast, but I mean, don't get me wrong. And yeah, it's a big deal. Rogan's huge. So but I mean, yeah. I don't know.
I mean, this is what I've taken to calling the LP strategy. Is instead of calling it the LP strategy, I'm calling it the Dave Smith plus mass media strategy, because that's what this is. That it's not really the LP that's doing the job. It's basically Dave Smith It's all Dave Smith. And the difference between what he's doing now, what he's did last year, and what he's going to be doing in 2024 as the nominee is that he's going to have an L next to his name. He'll be doing the same mass media shows that he's been doing, and it'll have the same effect because every time he goes on, he does great and he wakes people up, by the hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands, depending on the platform. But it's never multi-millions. It's never a big Ron Paul movement. And because again, it's not going to change because the only difference is he's going to have an L next to his name. Because let's face it, he already does have a bunch of Twitter accounts, not LP verified checkmark accounts, but a bunch of like hundreds of thousands of followers that really will follow him if he wants to make a stink about something and really wants to make an issue. Like there's hundreds of that. He's got like a small army of tweeters at his fingertips that will absolutely start talking about it and try to make it trending. And so it's like he already has all of that. I don't know what you need the LP for. I mean they have no basically no money, no they have like what 50 Twitter accounts plus a national one, and the LP Texas one really is cringy and sucks.
Yeah. I don't know. Like if I think about it long term, I don't really see where this goes because I just see inevitably, like if he does run for president and years from now, by then inevitably the message is going to be watered down. I don't know. I just don't see it like.
Well, no one can communicate with him. There is no LP strategy without Dave Smith. And even when he's talking about the LP strategy, he kind of gives it away because he was like, oh, I don't know if I'm running or not. But then like a little bit later, he'll be like, well, I can get onto these big platforms and I can spread the message. And I'm like, okay, so yeah, you are running and you've kind of already made that decision, just haven't like publicly said it. I don't know why, even though you basically did just say it right there. And
to be fair, that's an out. Like I would probably do the same thing where it's like, because I mean he's years out, so it's like it'd be weird to like be like I am for sure. So it gives you that out. Because I mean, who knows? He may have changed of heart. He may realize like what the fuck, like this isn't going to do anything that I think it's going to, and be like no, like
And I think he's committed at this point. He's going to do it, and he'll do a good job. Like he'll be better than average. And he'll wake tens of thousands of people up, but it's going to be tens of thousands, not multi-millions. And, Ron Paul was multi-millions because like the real appeal right there was it's a Republican saying this thing. And that's that was like the real, shocker of Ron Paul was that, he was being so incredibly based about everything. And as like a George W. Bush Republican Party. And so I mean this is why I took into like the Mises GOP is I'm kind of anticipating that okay this is not an LP strategy, this is a Dave Smith strategy, and eventually his nomination is going to be over, we're going to get to 2025 and kind of be in the same position, and they're like, all right, you guys ready to actually have a conversation about real strategy now? And I don't know, maybe at that point they'll come back over and they can hopefully, I don't know, put, endorse pedophilia in the LP constitution and, write the N-word all over it. And so they just like salt the earth behind it, that this thing's never coming back. And like, I would love to see that, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think these are hardcore LP types of libertarians that are just, you can't reach them. The GOP and the agorists, these are two good routes that get it. They understand the same problem and they adapt to it based on their own personal subjective, their own subjective values and strengths, and but they're adapting to the same truth. Whereas the LP is just not adapting; they're just denying that this is that there is a political reality to the situation.
I mean, I've been saying multiple times, I just feel like they don't do either correctly. So it's like, because the biggest things they always go like, it's kind of like there's two main concepts of politics. It's like there's messaging and then there's power. And it's like fucking the LP like does this shit like, or right now they're like, well, we're going to do messaging. Like that's what we're focused on. And it's like, I feel like, Maddie did a good job of explaining. And like, yeah, you can argue or quibble like, well, technically, it's not anti-libertarian to do this or blah, blah, blah. But to some extent, the very least, the fact that we even have this conversation, it muddies the water. It kind of fucking like it kind of muddies the message. So it's like you are inherently already sort of muddying the libertarian message. So like, okay, you're kind of not really doing a pure message. Like if you really wanted to like purely do a message, it would be like agorism. You're living it. Like what pure message is there? And you're gonna play the power game. Go fucking play the power game. There's no power to be had in the LP. There just isn't. So like it's just kind of you get a little bit, you get neither. Like it's like when you try to do both, you end up getting neither. And like I don't think we should go the GOP route, but I would much rather. I mean, at least in this current place in time, like the way I'm thinking about things, I would much rather people do that. Like I just feel like that would make more sense if they're going to, because that's one of the big things people say about like agorism is they'll be like a lot of LP types will be like, well, there's no reason for us to be at odds. We'll give you fucking political cover while you do your thing. Like, how? You have no political cover to give me. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? At least with the GOP, they do. I don't think they should, but at least that's a legit argument at that point. You have nothing to fucking give me. Like, if I go the agorist route and cast off politics, some fucking irrelevant third party is in no way fucking helping me. If anything, they're sullying my names. Like,
that's exactly what it is. It's like I feel like these guys are you're dragging our message and putting it into it like an embarrassing situation where it always loses. And this is like the worst part of the LP is that they're designed to associate our name with failure, and they're designed to take 3 to 4 million libertarian votes out of the system. And like if you're because let's face it, it's about 3 to 4 million every year, and it grows with population, and it's roughly 1% of the population at all times, and they show up to vote, and if you were to make that all in one party or all in another or divide it up even 50-50, there's a lot you could do with that. There's a lot of that's a real coalition that politicians will try to appeal to, as that is because that's millions of votes. It makes a big difference, and they are incentivized to do that. But by having no power and trying to spread the message, what you're saying is I'm a loser, and here's what I think the politics should be run like. Here's how I'm a loser, and here's how I think the political system should be run. It's like this is not a good look for us at all. And whereas at least if I'm I have the air of legitimacy of Republic, because I think that's another thing about the LP is like it has this really, really false for the people who are in it. Everyone else outside understands that this is not the case, but for the people who are in it, they kind of delude themselves into thinking that they have an air of legitimacy because they have a party or they have a letter next to their name, and that's just not the case. And the reason you get legitimacy is because you have power. The legitimacy is a function of power. The right to rule is synonymous with the ability to rule. It's like you deserve the power because you have it, and if you don't deserve it, you don't have it. And the legitimacy is intrinsic to having power. And if you're a Republican, you have some legitimacy with your message. It's like, well, look, I've won power. I have an R next to my name somehow. I managed to get myself on a debate stage that has real legitimacy. Like one of these guys is going to win something. And so you don't know which one of us it is, but the fact I even managed to get myself here shows I have some sort of legitimacy and credibility. And so when Ron Paul goes on that stage and gives the same message, as a much bigger effect because he actually does have some real legitimacy to himself and his message by simply being there. That and it's like you can't just like whereas like in the Libertarian Party you can kind of just I raised my hand. Oh, am I in the debates now? Yep. Okay. Good boy. Here's a lollipop, Timmy.
Have you read Sterner? And not to throw this off, have you read Sterner? I think you should, because there was some shit you're saying there, like, dude, you'd fucking. I mean, it's funny because it's one of those things where like I feel like you're coming from a completely different path and getting a lot of the same conclusions, and it's like in some senses like some of that shit is completely opposite your path, but at the same time you kind of get the same conclusion because you were kind of going on some of that like might makes right type stuff, which makes sense in a true sense, like I mean, like people can quibble. Like I always like Sterner's concept of rights is like what you have is what you have. So like if I go and kill my neighbors and take their house and no one does shit about it, you can quibble and say it was illegitimate. And you go, oh, it's like, well, I have it. And if someone doesn't do anything about it, if no one does anything about it, then it's mine. So I don't know what to fucking tell you.
Yeah. This is something I didn't read too much political theory, but I was able to derive what it turns out a whole lot of old thinkers have always thought is that, that there is something, rights come from responsibility, not by, just being born and inhabiting your body. It's like you don't own your body, you are responsible for it, and if you're irresponsible for it, you lose it, and by extension of that, all of your other property. Because like, let's face it, if you're like some debt-ridden drug addict with an STD in his brain and tons of mental illness, you are not in a position to have a to really have ownership of any property. And if you do, you won't keep it for long. You're going to lose it to the bank when you default on your debt or something like that. You're going to lose it in an overdose, or someone's just going to come and fucking take it from you because you can't defend yourself because you're a debt-ridden drug addict with STDs and mental illness, and you're not in a position to fight back. So it's like, in what sense do you really have a right if you don't have any control? You can't control yourself. How can you control property? And
I like to use the is ought here. So like, like fucking natural law or whatever is basically ought. Like I would love if everyone lived how that, but then like Stirner's conception of rights, or just like might makes right, that's is. So we can complain or whatever, but this is what is. And what the ought is we're trying to convince people, like this is what it ought to be. And like we can fucking like, and I can explain to you why, but at the end of the day, if I have this thing and no one does anything about it, it's fucking mine. You can fucking say it's illegitimate, but that doesn't make it any less mine. So I don't know what to fucking tell you. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and and if you it's like this is something I've noticed where I always say libertarians they're lowercase c Christians. Where you're not capital C where you are Christian proper. You're a lowercase c Christian where you have like basically all the same beliefs and religiosity, but you don't have like all of the things that really made Christianity work. And and when you're making arguments, you are arguing from a religious standpoint of this is moral. And even if you can say, well, I reasoned my way here, the reason is not it doesn't make it valid. The what you can it's like saying, well, I arrived at the right destination. Reason is kind of like a vehicle, and it can take you anywhere you want to go. This is again like what we spoke about last time. Like people have their incentives and they behave their incentives and then reason their way backwards. They use reason as a tool to justify how they got to where they are. And but what they kind of like this religion. It's like you can libertarians they'll say, okay, this ought to be the way it should go, but they I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with this. I was going to make a point about how it seems like that this is something I've noticed about between like myself and a whole bunch of atheists and who don't have that natural instinct to make ought arguments. They have that more of an instinct to make is arguments because these are more empirical. And it's like they may not be logically moral, but I remember what I was saying now. It's like if reason is like a vehicle, can take you anywhere you want to go. If you justify, well, I got here by reason and by logic, this is like saying, well, I arrived in the correct destination because I followed all of the all of the traffic signs and I obeyed the speed limit. And it's like, well, no, it's like what going to the grocery store, when you meant to go to, I don't know, the laundromat, and then just justifying it. Well, I obeyed all the traffic signs and traffic laws on my way here, and so therefore I arrived to the right spot. And then my wife is like, no, why did you not get the chores done, Andrew? And but that's the way that logic actually works. Reason itself is not like justifying, and you actually have to arrive at sound conclusions, which can be empirically verified. And something like natural rights just is not empirically verifiable. And in fact, we see exactly the opposite all the time. And this was such, for me, I had cognitive dissonance about this all the time. I used to, until I finally just accepted that, okay, incentives are far closer to reality than ideals. And people do, and this is something that really got reinforced for me last year when I did campaigning. I actually did, door knocking and knocked on over 1,000 doors and talked to, hundreds and hundreds of people. And it really struck me very quickly. People are not ideological. And these are like right wingers, left wingers, moderates. There, very few people are ideological. And that's why people don't behave their ideals. They behave their incentives, because people are not ideological in the first place. And if you're trying to push ideology onto people with like spreading the message, you are like barking up the wrong tree here, man. Like, this is not something they're receptive to. If they were, that, they still wouldn't be as receptive to you, because they have their own ideology and they're not necessarily open to yours. But but if you're saying, okay, what you're making all of these odd arguments of what we should be doing, or how these society should be run, it's like, I really think it's on you to say, prove it by a means other than just logic and reason and assertion. It's like, no, I think you need to say, this is actually going to produce the society I want. And something like something like this acceleration idea, I can really see how, making a real cultural push, because I've kind of started this with just myself and Mises GOP, and I've seen other people start doing it too, where it's like, we need to start telling like right wingers and libertarians, get the fuck out of blue states. All you're doing is giving them extra electoral votes, and you're not getting any liberty for yourself or your posterity. And if you just moved states, you don't have to move to Saipan, for fuck's sake. You can just move to like the next state over, that's a red state, and have a much better life, and give them the electoral votes that are going to actually change the system, and actually get you some better standard of living, a better life, a better liberty for you and your posterity. And all you have to do is move. And this is, I think we're at the point where, we need to start making a cultural push, and start really like shaming these people, like, you're still, making fun of them, you're still a blue stater or whatever. And you say you believe in liberty, but then your actions say that, well, that's not quite true. And it's like, because literally, if you care about liberty to the extent that you do, like, why are you not doing something that really is easy to do in order to get it? It's like saying, I really like eating healthy, but gosh, it's too difficult, it's too expensive, and I just want to go eat McDonald's because it's cheap and easy. And I weigh 400 pounds, but I really do like eating healthy. You gotta believe me, man. And it's like, I'm sorry, that I don't believe you at all. And so with like something, your idea, where we need to start helping divide up the country and and really I see it as helping to self-segregate it, because this thing seems to work pretty well. And that goes doubly for liberals, because I say, you're not welcome here. If you see a liberal and they're in the store, you go out and you form a crowd, you tell them they're not welcome here.
Yeah, push them farther into their shit. Because, like, kind of apply your archetropism idea. I've just kind of been thinking about this and how it kind of fits with your concept of, like, you're just shifting things up. Because with you moving things to an area of a concentration of more liberty, and then in other areas a concentration of more power, you still have the same amount of power. You just moved it to different locations.
That's exactly what you did.
Exactly. So I'm fucking completely okay with that. Like, if you can get someone to move that way, I mean, it's kind of like a cult, like at some point, like, I can be like, hey man, this is a fucking cult. This is a cult. Like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. And if they don't do anything, I mean, I guess you could almost look at it as like a chick that's in a relationship with someone's beating her. Like, I can try my best to get them out of that relationship, but to some point, unless you like magically are there when it happens and you break it up or whatever, but even then, that almost never goes the way you think. It usually ends up with them defending the guy or whatever. But my point being, it's like, you can like, it's kind of the whole idea of like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So it's like, I can do everything I can in the world and try to convince you. But at some point, you got to be like, they're fucking their own person and they're going to do what they're going to do. So like, and it's a matter of like prioritizing your time. So it's like, why would you fucking, like, some people want their fucking chains.
Yeah, people behave their incentives. And I think that, what we really need to do with this kind kind of accelerationist strategy to help along with the segregation is really push people to there. Like you need to like your incentive is this and move, and you need to move. I'm sorry that like this is not the state for you. If you if you are a wanting to vote for free stuff, we need to punish you somehow. It's like there needs to be some sort of some sort of incentive system, and some sort of feedback loop there that the more you are like a liberal cunt, the more that you get punished for that in a red state. And the more, and by the same token, if you're conservative, we don't really need to help that along because it's kind of already happening, where the left has already started to weaponize the state against the right wingers. And you are a fucking retard if you're staying there, like, especially if you're going to be in this LP thing where you're going to be really trying to make the state feel threatened, or you're trying to make the cathedral feel like it's not in control anymore, and you're going to make them hyper aware of that. And again, they're kind of like a dying lion, and you're like the young hyena that's going to go up and try to try to piss it off, and you're going to it's still a big lion. And it's like,
dying lions, like the example I use a lot. I think it's a great example for the state. And I use it like as an example of like, what does an animal when it's dying do? It moves to where it feels safe, and it feels safe in its centers of power in the blue states, in the cities, specifically blue cities. So like you're being given the like game plan, and we're telling you what you need to do. And like, I get it. Not everyone can move. I mean, so like maybe you can't move states, maybe move more rural. Maybe you can't move. Like then start becoming less dependent and becoming more independent. Develop multiple revenue streams.
For 1 second, I just got a low battery warning. My thing is in the other room. Do you mind keep talking?
Ah, shit. That was the end of it.
Yeah, keep going.
I don't have anything else to say. Fuck. Yeah, well, that throws off the vibe. Yeah. So.
Sure, I'm getting used to this podcasting thing. Haven't quite mastered it yet. This will not be repeated. Oopsie.
Yeah. What's up, Rogue?
Talk to the comment section.
Yeah. But no, it's funny because I do get really irritated with people be like, oh, well, just move. Or like say with Maddie, be like, oh, just make more fucking money. And it's like, yes. Like, yes. I mean, like, I get it. Not everyone can just magically be a millionaire tomorrow. Not everyone can move states. But it's like, you can move that way. Like, so it's like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. This magical secret that's just going to become this, like, you jump into magical freedom land. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you got to move that way. Like, and part of that is building wealth. Part of that's, making moves to where you're not dependent on other entities, or at least, like coercive entities. Like, like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it does really fucking irritate me because people just want this like magic fucking pill that will, insert them into freedom land. And it's like, no, like, and that was one of my biggest things from all this COVID shit was that like, it really fucking shook me. And it seems to be a lot of people. Adam Patrick's been talking about this a lot about how it's moved people from theory into praxis. And that's where I'm at now. And one thing I've been saying a lot too is like, create proof of concept, so it's like we can fucking bitch and moan about theory all fucking day long, but if we don't have a product, there's nothing to come to. Like, we're selling false goods. You're like, our fucking shit's so great. You're like, okay, it's so great. Where's your shit? Like, are you like, where's your shit? Like, where's my thing to go to? What? Like, why should I, like, cool, you have a bunch of fucking thoughts. Like, what the fuck do you want me to do with that? Like, and so it's like, you need to start applying these. If your theory is so great, go use it in the fucking real world. Like, that's like, instead of just yelling about how your message is so fucking awesome. Like,
okay. But worth is it that the behavior that we saw in 2020, which was really demoralizing to me when I recognized it for what it was, is that on all three sides, you had people asking for permission, from the state. And it's like, just right there. If you're a libertarian, that's fine. If you're a lefty, it's a lot less fine if you're a righty. It's not okay at all if you're a libertarian and you're asking permission for your liberty. And it's like they literally put everyone on house arrest, and a whole bunch of libertarians still stayed there. they still stayed in their blue states. It's like that would have been the line for me. If I hadn't, already had moved to, because I had kind of seen something, I had figured it was going to be a financial crisis, when I moved to Texas in 2019 from a blue state, and I had been seeing already oh, they're going to do some, they're going to manufacture a real hardcore crisis in order to get Trump out of office. And I don't want to be in a blue state when that happens, because this is going to be a shit show. And so I'm going to move to a red state where I'm going to be okay. And the, I kind of, I thought it was going to be a financial crisis with the Fed because they were raising interest rates at the time, but I hadn't expected COVID at all. But when it started, I'm like, oh my God. But that, right then and there, if you weren't one of the people that saw it coming, when you saw it there and you still didn't move, it's like you're like, fuck you, I'm leaving. I'm not paying you any taxes anymore. I'm going to another state that's going to treat me with some humanity and some dignity. If that wasn't you, what are you doing? How are you a libertarian? It's like, by the way, I'm a post-libertarian. How are you a libertarian if you're asking permission for your freedom? And this is something we saw with the like the left and the right too. They were both saying, like, the left was asking, like, no, please, no, Mr. Government, please, take my liberty away more. It's like, you didn't take enough liberty of my liberty away. And then the right was like kind of saying a lot of the same stuff, like oh no, we have to maybe we have to work for a vaccine, and we have to we can't they did oppose the lockdowns, but I mean there should have been a lot more pushback than there really was, but for like it was like 6 states that didn't lock down, all of them were red, and it's like a few of them that kind of did but really didn't. And then you had like DeSantis, who really started leading the pushback and leading the charge. That's what everyone should have like looked like, is like, hey, like you need to be like almost like having a not like a violent riot, but you need to be like showing force, or showing the potential for force to your government of, we don't approve of this. And you need to be in the mayor's office saying, you're not enforcing any of this, right? It's like, I know they just said this was the law. You're not enforcing a word of it. And it's like, I mean, that you should, like, this was a time for fight or flight, and a lot of them did neither. And again, it's like, I kind of expect that for the right, because their leaders are completely spineless, with few exceptions. For the left, that standard operating procedure to say, no, please take more of my rights away. I don't want it. I want you to have the responsibility for me, because I can't do that for myself. And that standard operating procedure for them. For libertarians, this is just not okay. It should have been fight or flight. And for a lot of people, it was neither. And it's like they defaulted to, I'm going to stay in my blue state and continue complaining, and because I want my liberty just handed to me. It's a right. And when they say right, it's an entitlement. And it's like, I'm sorry, buddy, that's not the way that's not what we empirically observe with reality. What we really observe is might makes right, and they have the might, you don't, and therefore you're locked in your house for a year with your kids. And at this point, I don't know what it's like. I really do believe we need to start like publicly shaming these people so that they know there is a disincentive, for being a coward, because cowardice is not virtue. And this is another thing I've noticed. That it's like, this is actually a C.S. Lewis quote, that cowardice always likes to clothe itself in moral language. And it's like, no, I'm going to stay here where I feel safe, in my blue state, in my house or whatever, and I'm not going to move into the unknown of another state. It's like one state over or something like that. And it's like that's really what it is. They just don't want to move into the unknown, because it's not that expensive to move. It really isn't. And it's like it's tough. It takes a little bit of savings, but you can do it. And if you have kids, that's like, they're like, oh, well, I have kids and that's expensive. It's like, okay, yes. But at the same time, I feel like that's all the more reason to want to go somewhere safe for their sake. It's like, is it too expensive to have their liberty and, that's going to be like this forever? You know, it's like, is that too expensive for you? It's like you gotta say, okay, it's not just one or the other. There's a bunch of different costs here and opportunity costs and trade-offs that you need to look for. And the fact that you're defaulting to what is most comfortable, I really think shows a lot more, cowardice than morality. And I'm not afraid to say, I'm not afraid to call them cowards. I really think that's what this is.
Yeah. By the way, Mark, you're totally right. That's one thing that drives me nuts is people make fun of like the agorists and shit, where it's like,
Yeah,
they're fucking doing something. Like, I do think there's something to your concept of like how you brought up a lot. I do feel like it comes off a little accusatory. So, but it's hitting a vein. It's hitting a vein where it's like
sometimes you gotta poke them and really to get the reaction.
It just feels like. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm saying this feels. So this is my fucking feels. Just feels like people who are like stuck in this LP world are like fucking. They're still stuck in theory. Because I know everyone says, like, oh, you can do both. It's like, but are you really? Or are you fucking bickering about some silly LP bullshit? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, look at, like, I don't know. There's just so many other things that can be done. And if you're going to play the power game, fucking go play the power game. Like, this is just nonsense. I don't know.
I really think you just nailed it on the head there, that these people are still in theory land. And like, if you're still in theory land after 2020, I don't know what I can say to you except to shame you. It's like shame on you for still being in theory land where you think this is I guess kind of a game or something like that. It's like, I just don't understand it at all. Like, because this was something big. Again, Adam Patrick has talked about this a lot, that it moved a lot of people from theory into practice. And and yes, agorism is practice, kind of by nature. But now you have all of these people who are just like, they're still stuck there. They're still thinking that, we're going to end the Fed. And you can tell it from their messaging too, where it's like, we're going to end all the wars, end the Fed, and these are our biggest priorities. It's like, these were bigger priorities in 2008 when they started off. It's like when the wars, when we were only at two disastrous foreign wars that everyone really hated, and we're just coming off the heels of a monetary crisis that crashed the global economy. Yeah, end the wars and end the Fed were a much bigger deal back then. When we're at like, I don't know, like 4,000 or 5,000 troops in both Afghanistan and Iraq, and basically the rest of the countries we've already pulled out of, like we're at like just a few hundred in Syria or something like that. This isn't a war. There aren't any wars left to end. We can pull the troops out and I'd feel better about that. But it's like and now like one thing we didn't have in 2009 and 10, which was Bitcoin. We don't really need to end the Fed anymore. You can just secede from it with Bitcoin. And what you could fight for realistically, if you were a GOP strategy guy, is just to get some preferential tax treatment for it to make it like a legal tender. You're all done. You don't need to end the Fed anymore. Just buy Bitcoin. And that's a real practice that you can do. That's I'm never going to understand libertarians that don't own Bitcoin either. It's like, you really aren't paying attention to your own theory. If you don't own Bitcoin, forget practice. You're not good with theory if you don't own it. And they really just seem like they're stuck here. They're stuck in theory land. And this is the people that you're kind of marking yourself now. And I really think that what you kind of talked about was helping along this self-segregation that's taking place now. Again, we're at the end of a fourth turning cycle where something like this is very normal, where people will start to shuffle things up. And I think this is I think this is an excellent tactic that we should be employing all of the way, whether you're a GOP guy or an agorist guy, is helping to move the self-segregation along.
Yeah, the way I see it is the LP is at best PR for a product, and it's like, but we don't really have much of a product, because people bitch and moan that like, well, no one wants what we're selling. This is like, well, you don't have. What are you selling? What the fuck are you selling? Like, there's no, like, I mean, sure. I mean, I'm not, okay. I say that, but there are some concepts that, like, obviously there's Bitcoin. There's there's freedom cells and shit like that. But it's like we have been like 95+% stuck on theory and messaging, and like less than 5% stuck on fucking doing. So while I have my issues with like utilizing the LP, at least if like we had like a complete inverse and like 90+% of people engaging in those type of activities, and then we had kind of a more minor thing of like the messaging and stuff. Okay, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense to have a company where 99% of your fucking your time is spent promoting your product. Like I just, or you don't even really have a product to sell. And on top of that, once you have proof of concept, you don't fucking really. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, it does.
Yeah,
help
you don't need to prove that. You don't really need to sell people on a theory when you can sell them on the product.
Yeah.
It's like you don't sell people ideas. They're not willing to buy ideas. They're willing to buy results. Mm-hmm. And it's I mean, having success is its own best marketing. And this is something like where I said, like Maddie was like saying, you should like earn more money or something like that. Stop being poor. And I followed it up with stop losing elections. And because these are results. These are results people look at and to evaluate whether you have a successful theory or not. Yep. And if you don't have a successful theory, you're going to look like a loser. And they're going to be like, okay, you're a it's either okay. I think that this really is it's one of these two, and I'm not quite sure which, but I'm pretty sure of which. But it's either you don't have a product to sell, or they don't like the product that you're selling. And I think it's a mixture of both, because like, again, I made the claim last time that we spoke that people are basically default religious, and because of that, and since all politics is religion, these two are intertwined. And so what you notice is that libertarianism is basically the atheism of religion. It's the atheism of the state. And so if you think like, okay, atheists are like 2 to 3% of the population, and libertarians are 2, and and then you notice that libertarianism has a whole lot of atheists in it. They tend to go together because, again, one is the expression of the other. And I really think if you're trying to, like, imagine going to, when I say you would know this for sure, try selling atheism to like a Baptist convention. How's this going to work out? Try selling atheism in America. It just doesn't work, whether you're right or not. It's like, this is not the kind of product these people want to buy. And you need to be, you need to understand that. And if you kind of just, you don't want to go my route, whereas to be a little, more like a GOP, where I'm actually going to be selling an actual kind of government, like private statecraft is my kind of solution. As like, because I see it almost as like a miniature kind of secession, where instead of seceding from the government, I'm privatizing a portion of it. But if you don't want to go that route, and you still want to have your liberty, you can go the agorism route, which is a real practice, and you can really put your beliefs into work this way. And it just seems like, I just lost it. Shoot.
Yeah. No, it's good you lost it, because there was something I was just losing, and I was like, fuck, I have a good point. I want to, like, all right, I don't know if it's you or it was Maddie or Vin or one of you three, because you guys have very similar thoughts. There was something that full disclosure, I'm an atheist. So, like, I'm fucking, but, like, there, and one thing, I don't remember, one of you guys said was something about how, like, and this isn't the first time I've heard it, this is a common critique of atheism, where they'll be like, well, you're just defining yourself as against theism. So, without a theism, there is no, or like, just, but
yeah,
to some extent, that's semantic bullshit. But there is also some extent where that kind of rings true, because there is a period of time as an atheist, like it's a well-known thing. People always joke about your angry atheist phase. And there was a period of time that I went through my angry atheist phase, where I was just like, I just kind of was fresh to, like, like I kind of had just broken through that shell. And it's very similar in essence to a lot of like the minarchist, anarchist type shit. Yeah. I never read the Bible, Mark. Okay. But anyways, dude, I was fucking religious my whole life. Went to Christian school, everything. If anything, I started reading the Bible more to get me out of it. But anyways, I'm not doing fucking theism shit. I just found that kind of borderline condescending. But
that's fine. Keep going.
But anyways, I actually don't even care if people are theists now. Anyways, it's fun. It's one of those things that, like, once you get past that, like, angry atheist phase, you start realizing it's kind of like, well, this isn't really that big of a deal. Like, and me making this a big deal kind of, like, makes it a big deal. You know
Yeah,
what
it
I mean?
does.
Like, so like, and it is defining myself by that. So it's like,
Which is kind of like agorism, you know. You want to have some separation from the state because you know, when you're doing all of these big elections and big TV things, you are making it a big deal. And you know, it's like you are almost lending credibility to the system that you're trying to get away from. And the you know, whereas, you know, that's not a problem for me because I do think the system has credibility because it fucking has power. It's like that kind, the two kind of go together. But you know, if you're on the opposite side of that, you know, and you're like, this thing has no credibility to me, this thing has not, you know, it's like, and you know, same thing with the church. You know, again, this is something where I say the religion and the politics are very closely related. So where if you're a you know, you're kind of at that non-angry atheist phase where, you know, where you've matured a little bit and you're like, this isn't quite the big deal I thought it was, and me behaving this way is making it more of a big deal. That, you know, it will seem to I guess that does manifest itself as, you know, agorism. And you know, and you know, I can see that a lot. You know, and this is one of those things I just noticed when I was going through archotropism. Is I just kept noticing this thing over and over. I'm not sure. I don't think this is a law, but I just kept noticing how, you know, the religion kept, you know, the politics kept being a reflection of the religion, and it's always seemed like the two were intertwined, and you know, there was some sort of feedback loop there. But and I could never get over that. How, you know, how what the religious change always seemed to precede the political change.
Yeah, and that's a shift in my thinking too, which is kind of funny with me being atheism. I have, as of late, been kind of more friendly to the concept of utilizing it in like a just purely for its utility, and the fact of, and maybe I'm starting to look at human nature a little bit different, and you know, the whole remnant concept, and hey, some of these motherfuckers are sheep. So like, you know, like if I gotta go, hey, God said, I mean, whatever, I don't give a fuck. Like, if that's what I have to tell you to get you in the fucking go the way I want you to go, I'll tell you that, and I'll even make the argument from a religious perspective, and I can even do that while saying, but I'm an atheist. Like, but you know, like, you know, my buddy Jacob Daniel over at like, you know, fucking whatever, he told me how this, you know, if we look at Romans 13 this way and blah 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 blah, like, you know, like there are ways to make that argumentation without even having to be dishonest about it. And there's something to like religion. And you know what? Like I kind of also equate it to natural rights. And a lot of people are going to read about that in here. Same thing with natural rights. I'm not gonna lie. I mostly kind of behave with natural rights almost as if they're an a priori. But I also have that realization of that, like, they're still kind of a made up thing that we made up.
Yeah.
I just think they have utility. I think natural rights has utility. So, like, to behave in that manner, to some extent, depending on what we're talking about. But, like, same thing with religion. I can kind of see how that would be useful to use to your advantage to get people to go that way. And if that's what's necessary to get people to make this some sort of sea change, I don't give a fuck. Like, because a lot of people, like, bring up the founders and how, like, you know, they're like, well, not all of them are religious. Or some people be like, they are religious. And it's like, well, you're kind of missing the point. The nation was religious. So like, you're like, who gives a fuck what these people who sit above in shadow, what their thoughts are? If anything, like, it kind of is more proving my point that I'm getting at. If they aren't, like, these are these people who are kind of above it and are like, well, this is what the sheep need to fucking get the way we need them to go. I mean, all that condescending, I don't give a shit. Like, if it works, it works.
Yeah, I mean, this is Pareto and Burnham's. They had the, you know, that theory of the ruling class is that it seems like the you know, you have two, with Machiavelli said it too, is that, you know, you have really two classes of people, the ruling class and the ruled. And a lot of people, they just default to being the ruled class. And you know, like you have to have a religion that suits them. You know, that religion really isn't for the rulers; it really is for the ruled. And the way it ends up being a feedback loop is that, you know, you see what the people, you know, the people are almost in the driver's seat on this one, because if you see that you know, that like the people can't handle a certain kind of law, it doesn't make sense to make it, because what will end up happening is that, you know, if you make a law that nobody can follow, they're all just going to completely ignore the law. And that gets them into the habit of ignoring your laws, which is a threat to your rule as a ruler. So you don't want to do that. It's not in your interest. And so you always, you know, make your laws that as a close parallel to the religion that is actually practiced. And this is my theory of why that there ends up being a you know, a sort of you know, link between religion and politics, is that this is the one. This is kind of the where the people actually are in the driver's seat for once is the religious portion, and the whatchamacallit, the ruling class is actually in the passenger seat on this one. And if you really want to make something, you need to like learn to have all of these different tools and be adaptive, like because I can do evolution if I really want to talk about it, because I can do either the religious explanation for what I want to talk about, or I can the Christian one, or I can do the evolutionary biology explanation with and I can because I have this tool where I need to be able to communicate to multiple different audiences, and I think this is something you get when you're a lot more mature. You can start to use different arguments where you don't really have to be the one believing it. Mm-hmm. And I think you've mentioned this. You just mentioned this too, where hey, you can start making the religious argument and having an appreciation for it, because you understand that other people kind of need this, and it's one of those things like you can have dumb atheists, but they tend to be a little bit more intelligent than the average. But for the most part, people need something like this, and. And I don't know where it was, but I think somewhere in our belief system we got into the forgetting. This is another thing where I say we don't observe natural rights, because we got into the habit of asking permission for them, and this was something we observed last year, and it's like again, I think we're repeating ourselves now, or I am. This is where we need to start helping along this self-segregation of separating the wheat from the chaff, and starting to shame these people for not behaving the way they say they believe.
I was just thinking. I mean, this is just a half-formed thought, not even. While you're saying that, and kind of something I said and you said brought together, I think religion is in a sense just kind of an a priori. That's really all it is. So like. For example, with us libertarians would be natural rights. Like, and whether it be God, natural rights, whether it be, I don't know, equality, like it's kind of this like a priori of like, this is my starting point and we're going from there. And it's like, so it is kind of makes this concept of like religion being inevitable. And like, so everyone has their sort of religion. And really it's just kind of what's your base value. Because like, I don't know, I guess it's kind of the divide between objective and subjective, really.
Yeah. Like, if I'm making an evolutionary biology argument for it, what I would say is that the reason we're hardwired for religion is this is something that is probably integral to creating a good society and a good civilization, and you probably can't do it without it. And this is probably why that's there. And because it seems to be some sort of uniting factor, where you can have multiple tribes unite around a common religion, and they don't have to kill each other. And that seems to be the reason, the evolutionary biology reason for the why of you have 95% of people really need religion, and if they don't have it, bad things start to happen, and or at least you start to see really bad side effects and decivilizing behavior start to occur. It's not good. And but that's the argument I would make for why we are or at least from a not, obviously as a Christian I believe we have a God-shaped hole in our heart, but if I'm going to be making an evolutionary biology argument for it, I would say, hey, this is probably something this is something highly adaptive, and it's probably good for the people to have it and to be encouraged to have it and to practice it, because this is probably something that is integral to having a good civilization. And if you try to take that away from them, bad things are going to happen. Because
Minder says religion is what man says of God. Natural rights is what is discovered from God. Two different ideas. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's one way to look at it, but that kind of makes it so that natural rights is. I mean, one of the main concepts. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I just feel like natural. I don't know. I just feel like this little squirrely bullshit that like try to. I mean, I don't know. I'm not like that well versed in the Bible, but at the same time, it's kind of like one of the main concepts of natural rights is that it is independent from whether you need a God or not. So it works with the concept of God or not with it. But I also think it's still made up. But I'm not saying it doesn't have utility. Made up doesn't mean it doesn't have utility. So
yeah, well, they, yeah, okay, yeah, you can have a more adapt. We call it, Matt and I, we call it a mind virus, where you have something that's a more one mind virus is more adaptive than the other, and it's not about whether they're true or false, but they're often correlated, but they're not causal, and but they will have they will succeed because there is some relationship to truth there, and in a sort of Darwinian fitness sort of way.
I
And
would really love to believe that as individuals, that every one of us could just be like, hey, I don't like being hurt and I don't like people taking my shit. So if we could all just abide by these, like, don't hurt people and don't take their shit, it would be fucking wonderful. But there is something too, like, I don't know if we can.
This is the this is the archetropism problem right here, where hey, this thing is valuable. People want it because it's valuable to them. But that, like, your shit is valuable to me, and that's never going to not be the case. And because there's that value there, and hierarchy is natural. That's another thing is, aggression is always going to be profitable. Statecraft is always going to be profitable, and humans are always going to be hierarchical. You put the two together, and you're always going to have hierarchy for aggression, which is a state.
Yeah, and I also think to some extent humans are always going to be somewhat kind of dumb, or at least some of us will be, because I actually think you can completely logically derive out why our libertarian ideology works out in it. Like, if everyone was fully rational, we would be like, hey, we never know what side of this equation we're going to be on, so it makes more sense if we just fucking, don't fuck.
And you can see the reason we're not right there, because if we're all rational, who's going to grow the food and take our trash out?
Yeah.
Who's going to collect the trash? Seriously, it's like there's a reason we're all not rational. It's because it's only adaptive for a few, and it's not something that's supposed to be universal. Because if it was, we're going to have bigger problems. And
I want to take a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean
go ahead. No,
I want to clarify real quick, because this is a common thing. I mean, no one really got it, but I know with atheism, like, I don't assert there is no God, and because that's a common thing. People say, and there are atheists who assert there is no God. I'm more or less taking I don't know. Atheism, theism is a question of belief. Agnosticism or Gnosticism is a question of knowledge. So generally speaking, I'm not a fan of Gnostics in any regard. I know someone brought up Gnostics in the live chat. I think that's a different thing, to be fair. So, like, I mean, when I say Gnostic, I mean someone making a truth claim about absolute knowledge. So, like, I mean, unless it's something like, this is a hat, then sure, okay, like, whatever. But, like, when it comes to, like, a god or lack thereof, if you're asserting absolute knowledge, I feel like you're not being truthful to yourself. I mean, and there might be, I don't know where you come at it. I mean, that's just where I'm not a big fan of that type of Gnosticism in general. Right. I really don't care whether you believe in a god or not. It's more that, like, if you're a cunty, like, presumptive asshole about it.
Yeah, where are you on the stoned ape theory? Do you know what that is?
I've heard of it, but what about it? Like, if you think
the stoned ape theory basically says that human civilization, evolved. We evolved out of the primate phase because of these hallucinogenics, where we started to see all of these, these spirits and meet these other entities that revealed all of these truths to us. And this is the beginning. This is the real beginning of religion, and how this is why because it's really funny that. Again, if you believe in evolution, how did we assume that religion isn't true? How did we adapt to it then? That was always really screwy to me. But I could see that if we have if it is something real, I mean, real isn't something you could experience if you really wanted to, and you had like a shamanic culture, or like a shamanic religion to begin with, where you're taking these plants and these herbs and these mushrooms and stuff like that, and you are directly experiencing these things, that would make it, that would make a lot of sense of why we evolved to have it, and and how we managed to. Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of reading with this, but yeah, why you adapted to such a thing. And by the way, just because it's, drug derived, your experience comes from, taking a certain chemical, that doesn't make it true or false. That is not an immediate falsification, because, just because I can see something, that is, different when I'm on this, when I have a chemical that alters my ability to perceive something, it could be true, it could be false, but either way, but because the experience is repeatable scientifically, and you can, or at least empirically, then you can have a real evolution towards it. And that would make sense of why we at least evolved to have it and why we were able to separate ourselves from the other apes.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not necessarily sold on it. I'm not against it either.
Yeah.
The stoned ape theory is interesting. I also can see it fully from a completely like evolutionary perspective. I don't really feel like it's that complicated that how we would develop it. Because like, I don't know. I was just thinking about the other day. I was with my kids and like, I think there was like lightning that hit like probably like maybe a couple 100 yards away from me. And it was like, it was fucking like, whoa, like, holy shit. And like, and all you got to think about is like someone without any concept of electricity or anything like, it's pretty easy to figure out like how someone would be like, holy shit, who did I piss off? And it builds from there. And it's like, and it obviously is like, say something like Christianity, it like obviously works well for like a society, like, and it makes sense. It's kind of like, it's in a sense, it's an extension of evolution, it's like fucking Dawkins, I think, went a lot into like memes and how those apply to like religion. And I think it makes sense. And that's not even just to like dispute whether the truth of religion or not. I mean, it is like some people could say that is God working in his own way, whatever. I don't know. But I do think there is definitely a reason why religions presented themselves in the utility they present. So like, I mean,
and if they have utility, then all of us have an incentive to use it. And that, whether you believe it or not, you have a utility. There's utility in using it.
I mean, not necessarily. It depends. Because I mean, I feel like there are like ideas you can grow out of, and there are ideas that were useful for the time. But I mean, I'm not against it either. Yeah. I do think I am not saying, as I know there's been it seems like there's beginning to be this push of like, like all hands on deck to move religion in that way. But I'm more like I guess I'm more looking at an individual approach. And like, I more would just do it where it applies. If I'm dealing with someone where that's an effective tool, I'm not going to be biased against or for it. So like, I'm more just going to be like, here's this person, and I'm interacting with them at an individual level. I feel like religion will work here. But if it's someone that's religion's not going to work, why the fuck would I use religion? And that's kind of where I'm at. So like, whatever.
And I think this is, again, this kind of goes back to our own political practice, because, again, I see something like, I look at the politics now, the way I look at religion almost, that, this looks like something I could use. I can see how I can use this thing as something that has utility and can provide value to what I want it to do. And it is, something of a hacker mindset that, is kind of left over from, my initial, job training was, a hacker, a normal person will look at like a computer and see like and ask themselves, how can I use this? Whereas like a hacker will look at the same thing and see like, how can I misuse this? Or what's all the other ways I could use this that a normie isn't going to think of. And I kind of take that same approach to, from religion also to politics. I just keep, I keep seeing this thing over and over and over again. Howdy, Vigenti. How you doing? Yeah, great tuning in for the first time. We're about done. So, Jose, any final thoughts?
No, I feel like we did a good amount of stuff. I kind of touched on a lot of stuff I've been stewing on. I think it's very interesting how because like, I have a feeling that if we went to our influences, we came from completely different ways, we would have arrived at very similar conclusions. And I think that's a very important thing right now is
we're behaving our incentives.
Yes. I mean, and you have me, you, Pete, Vin, Maddie, some other people are kind of arriving at very similar conclusions, not the same. Adam, very striking at a nerve. And then on the other hand, you have some other people who seem to be shying away from this discussion.
Yeah, they're
I'm not throwing any accusations whatsoever, but this hasn't been a fucking discussion I've been pushing for a long fucking time. Like this discussion, and it's been kind of pushed off the side. While at the same time, on the big screen, we've been having discussions of whether memes break the NAP or bigotry or whatever the fuck, like nonsense. Whereas like, why the fuck are we not taking this seriously? Like I don't know. It seems to be an inversion of what should be.
You just hit it. You just hit on a question that I think we should both think about this and answer it next time. And the question is, okay, if you and I and Adam and Matt and Vin and all these other people if we are all, arriving at the same conclusion from different ways, it is because we are behaving the same incentives, not our ideals. We're behaving a common set of incentives and rationalizing backwards, kind of what we've talked about earlier. So if you have all of these other people, like in the LP, as you just mentioned, what's their incentive? That's the question. I don't want to answer it right now. I want to save that for next time, but that's an interesting question. What's their incentive?
Oh, to add to that, what happens now that there's the takeover is basically all but done? What happens now that the Prags have left? What happens now that slowly they're moving out their opposition? What now? You still have years. Incentive? You still have years, and you still have this question that, like, me and you and others are bringing up, and other people are kind of, maybe not necessarily avoiding. I don't know what their motivations for are, but it seems to be this, like, if anything, it's always just quickly thrown aside. Like, what are they talking about? Like, we're not gonna do that. Like, and it's never really taken seriously. But it's like you said, I don't think it's a foolproof way to tell if a concept is legit by how many people are coming to it from different ways. But it is a
it does tell you that the incentives are there.
It implies it. I'll give it. It's an implication.
Yeah.
It is a heavy implication.
Very strongly implies it, that there are a common set of incentives there.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, you don't necessarily know, but they're there.
Yeah, but I guess with that, we're at plugs. So I'm a No Way Jose YouTube channel. I'm also on anywhere audio podcasts are at. I have a fucking full week this week. I have a Patreon, though, so it's not like all of it's going to get released. I'll probably release it out slowly. Patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. Obviously, I have this discussion that we just had. I'm talking to Maddie this week. I'm talking to Jacob Daniel, who's, I forget what he's basically a Christian anarchist. So we'll have more like discussions like that. It'll be interesting. And so we kind of come to a lot of similar conclusions for different ways. Same thing. I have Magnus Panvidia. I'm starting my series on. I want to do a podcast for every chapter of the Anarchist Handbook. So I'm kind of like tackling everyone. So I'm going to start with Stirner. I'm doing it out of order, but Godwin's the first chapter. It was so fucking boring. I don't know. I'll eventually do it. I'm doing them out of order, however I feel like. But I'm starting with Stirner just because that's what I want to do. But who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing somebody. Did I name 5? Whatever.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all of them. Yeah.
I think you.
Jeremy Kaufman. Jeremy Kaufman. I have this week as well, so that'll be a good one. So,
all right, Jose, it's been great. Love to talk.
I appreciate it. It's been fun. Yeah.
Someone write down. Let me write down in the comments the what is the LP's incentive system, so I have it there for next time. That's going to be the question we start with. All right, buddy.
All right, appreciate it, man.
Take care.